Hi, I'm AJ Hogue, one of the teachers of Learn Real English, and welcome to our video course. Now, let's get started with rule number one, or secret number one. And rule number one is to always learn English phrases. And to never study just individual words. So, in this course, we're going to teach you a totally new way to learn English, a totally new way to study English so that you can speak English quickly, easily, automatically, powerfully, confidently. So, what's the old way of learning English? You know it because you learned it in school, you've been using it for years and years and years. You sit in a classroom, you've got a textbook, you memorize lists of vocabulary words, you study lots and lots and lots of grammar rules. You do lots of reading and little fake conversation drills and activities. And this is the traditional old way of learning English, but we have a totally new and different way of learning it. And we're going to teach you each part of that, one part every day for a full 7 days. So let's start with part one, secret one, rule number one. Learn phrases, not individual words. Now, of course, a phrase is a group of words. It's a group of words that naturally go together. This is very important. You see, when you only study individual words, you are doing a number of things that make learning difficult. Number one, when you study just an individual word, like a vocabulary, something in a vocabulary list, or even in your notebook, you write one single word and then you write the meaning or the translation. Here's the problem. That word has no connections to anything else. Therefore, it's difficult for your brain to remember it. That's why you have to keep repeating again and again. You look at that list and you try to memorize it. And then the next day you forget, and then you go back and you try to memorize it again and again and again and again and again. And maybe after a very long time, you might remember it. But most likely, you're going to forget it, especially long term. And yet, that's the way most students are learning English and studying vocabulary. Here's another problem with just learning single words. When you study just single words, you're not learning any grammar. But when you study phrases, you are actually learning grammar. It's a kind of an effortless, easy way to learn grammar. You don't need to think about rules. You don't need to think about anything, and yet you will be learning correct grammar when you study groups of words instead of phrases. Let me give you an example of this. Let's just, take any phrase like, or a simple sentence. He was a bad dog. He was a bad dog. Now, let's imagine that you're a new English student and, the word bad is new for you. Of course, I know you know it, but let's just imagine you go way back to the very beginning, your first year of learning English, and bad is a new word. Now, the normal way of studying that, you would write it down, bad, it would be in a little, a list, and then you would study, bad means not good, bad means not good. You'd probably translate it to your own language. And then after lots and lots and lots of time, maybe you would remember it. Well, using our system, you do something very different. You would write down that whole phrase. He was a bad dog. It's actually a full sentence. Or you could just write down, was a bad dog, or he was a bad dog, whatever. And then every single time you study or review, you would always study the full, complete phrase. You would never just study that word bad, you would study the whole thing. Now by doing that, you're getting free grammar. How do you know? Well, because first of all, you're getting that verb, was, right? Was. And that's just going to stick in your brain. He was, he was, he was. You're also learning articles. You don't need to remember what that means. You don't have to even worry about it. And yet you know that it's correct to say, in this situation, a bad dog. He was a bad dog. Some people say a. He was a bad dog. Both pronunciations are correct. So he was a bad dog. He was a bad dog. A lot of students have problems. When do I use a or a? When do I not? When do I use the? and you're trying to memorize all these super complicated rules and situations for it, forget that. It's too complicated. You'll never remember it. Just study phrases, and you'll start to feel when to use it, when it's correct, when it sounds correct, and when it sounds strange, when it's not correct to use those things.